What is implementing Lean Six Sigma going to cost an organization? Clearly, nothing is for free. We know that, Rick. What's it going to cost in terms of people working on it, in terms of time away from doing their daily job, in terms of leadership involvement, and just sheer money? What's it going to cost to do Lean Six Sigma, to hire somebody to help you, or to buy the training materials if you hire somebody internally to do it yourself?
Good question. And that's the question we get from many of the potential customers who contact us. They're certainly interested. They may have heard good things about Lean Six Sigma and so on, but then they're interested in the cost, what it's going to cost them in terms of time, resources, and so on. And I'm going to answer that with a caveat. And my caveat is it first depends. A company must decide why they need to even do Lean Six Sigma in the first place. Is it because warranty costs are too high? Is it because it's taking us too long time to market for our products and services? Is it taking us too long to turn around parts that need to go out to our suppliers? Is it because our record keeping isn't good? There's many, many reasons. Once management and leadership has decided that the cost of doing nothing, in other words, the cost of just letting business go as we have always done it, the cost of doing nothing exceeds the cost of doing something. It's now time for them to get on the bandwagon, to decide maybe Lean Six Sigma would help me. But then what they have to decide is, what is their vision? What is the vision of implementing Lean Six Sigma? Do they have some core problems that they need solved? Do they need solutions to those? Because if that's the case, they can certainly hire an outside source to come in and help them solve their problems, and then they can carry on business as usual. Okay? They can also develop the capability within the business to have a team of people that have that capability that now can solve problems. Mm-hmm. Okay, each of those have different costs. If a company decides that they want to look at industry best standard, or if they want to develop the capability within the company to now solve problems, to grow the intellectual capital, so that people are looking at their processes as they need enhancement, they might have variation, they might have waste. I want to have a tool set. I want to have a knowledge base. I want to have people that can solve those. Mm-hmm. Do they want to now put it through the business so that we have alignment at all the levels of the business? And in other words, not only is leadership involved, management is involved, and the process workers are involved. Do I want this to be a top-down driven improvement deployment, or do I want it to bubble up? Those are things that the businesses are going to have to decide. But I'm going to say experience has told us that many times companies have to solve, if they're hemorrhaging, if they've got key issues, they have to solve those problems first, and they need to do that most expeditiously. But then they need to look within their company and say, okay, what capability do I want? And normally, or I should say most of the time, the companies will decide, you know what, I want that capability. And that capability now requires a level of training. It requires a level of involvement with managers and leaders. Mm-hmm. It involves an organization that might have systems and structures that support the training, that support when projects get implemented, support the tracking of the projects, or as a minimum, encourage the completion of the project and monitor those projects to make sure they don't get bogged down. And then lastly, many companies even consider, okay, coaching. We want our projects, once they're launched, if I'm trying to improve a process, mm-hmm. we want them to be successful in terms of their output, in terms of what they do to the process, in terms of how much does it cost me in resources. And so they would probably want initially, when they start off, they would want coaching to make sure their projects are successful, kind of like a proof of concept. So to answer your question, typically there will be a form of leadership and management training, and those can consist of anywhere from 1 to 3 days of training. So that's the time involvement for the managers in terms of them getting the education mm-hmm. or the orientation to what Lean Six Sigma is, and also to what their involvement is. There's roles and responsibilities that leaders and managers have to learn. And if they don't learn them, they will see that their deployment will not be as successful as it could be. Then you decide to develop a core competency within the business, and that might be a level of training called green belt and then black belt. And each of those carry with them a certain skill set. Each of them carry with them a certain level of training. For instance, green belt training is typical, I would say, in the industry, about 2 weeks of training. You can receive it online, a blended solution, or in class. Black belt is the same way. It's 4 weeks of training, and you can receive it as a blended solution, e-learning, or face-to-face with the instructor. And they learn things such as designed experiments. They learn such things as regression analysis. In other words, the statistical tools, the techniques that allow them to improve their processes. And then coaching comes with, okay, once they launch a project, what type of involvement do I need from somebody outside the team to help make sure that project moves along? So there's time involvement. I'm going to say, if I had to list one of the critical factors in terms of why some companies have infinite amount of success, others don't necessarily achieve that level they were capable of doing, it's because the leaders and the management team feel that, okay, we support Lean Six Sigma, they verbalize that, and then they launch it, and then they expect the business to deploy that down, and then the managers are not involved. Well, we all know that process workers, if they think something's important to management and to leadership, they will stay engaged and they will want to be very successful at it. If they think the management and leadership have just talked it and they aren't ready to really stay engaged, then they're going to lose the interest, they're going to lose the involvement, and they're not going to have the intensity that they could. So I'm going to say time involvement is dependent, time, cost, and output, or I should say the results, are dependent upon what the company first determines is the need for it, what the vision they see for their company becoming, and then lastly, the plan. So it's a function of all those things that I've talked about, and costs can be minimized or they can be optimized. Many companies call us and they say, okay, we just need to solve this problem. How much will it cost us to do that? Well, we, providers, outsourced agencies can go ahead and provide minimum cost, solve the problem, and then they move on the way. But the company does not have the capability the next time a problem arises to now handle that. They have to go through the same routine. So companies finally have to decide what to do, and is it worth the cost associated? Here's the cost that's involved. There's a cost associated with the training, and that certainly is dependent upon what providers charge for their training. There's a cost associated with time. People have to take time out to attend the class. Now they need to learn what was taught in the class. They need to practice what was taught in the class. Sometimes that's on the job. Sometimes that's done at home or off-duty time. They then have to allow time for the development of a team, if that's what's going to be used to improve the process. And that takes resources in terms of manpower. It takes in terms of some people might find themselves on a team. It takes 5 to 15% of their time. If they're a black belt, the company might decide to engage that black belt full time. Typically, a green belt is engaged part-time. But the company has to decide those. So those are the time involvement. The emotional involvement certainly requires managers and leaders to be involved at a certain level and to stay engaged so that the projects get moved on and get done, and that they are strategically linked to the business goals. There's also a cost associated with, okay, the structures and the systems that are set up to support that. And each company decides what level they want to be involved at. And there's a cost associated with materials that are now used by the teams, the project teams, and software. But I think most businesses are savvy enough today to know that software, for instance, is critical in the solution of problems, in arriving at new product development earlier, and so on. So that's the cost associated with it. And without putting a dollar value on that, many companies work to minimize that cost and optimize the results. Other companies say, you know what, I want a deployment that eventually will become self-sustaining, and I will have the capability to now, henceforth, after let's say a 1.5-year time frame, to be training my own people, to be solving my own problems, and so on. And I'm going to say the cost associated with that is more than the cost associated with a one-time solution of a problem.